This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, April 20th, and this is Kathy Neifeld with AgencyONE, and I am pleased to present the continuing Monday, Wednesday, Friday WebExes from AgencyONE. And this week we have a very unique three-part series where we are going to introduce to you and discuss our relationship with Annexus. Our speakers today on this WebEx are my partner, Gonzalo Garcia, and we also have James Hahn, who's the Executive Vice President for Life and Sales Distribution for Annexus. This first series today, Monday, we're going to do a general overview, and then we're going to get granular on Wednesday and Friday. If you have any questions, please type them into the on the screen, and we will be sure to address all of your questions at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Gonzalo Garcia.
Good morning, everybody. This is Gonzalo, and I'd like to welcome everybody today on behalf of my partners, the entire AgencyONE team, and myself. James, we've got some screen.
Hang on with me. I just thought, stay with me. I just want to quit there. Go ahead, Gonzalo. Just pull it back up.
Okay, sorry about that. First of all, on behalf of everybody at AgencyONE, we sincerely hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. I'm really excited to have my dear friend James Hahn on the phone here with us today. I've known James for over 20 years. I'm really excited to be working with him again as one of only a select few agencies nationally that have been selected as a distribution partner for their proprietary index universal life products at Annexus. Good morning, James. Great to be with you.
Good morning, everybody.
Thanks for being on the call with us. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Before we get to your prepared comments, James, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here. And it was a year or maybe just over a year ago that we had breakfast in Virginia. We've had a long dating process, but you reached out to us, and for which I'm very thankful for, and giving AgencyONE an opportunity to really get to know Annexus and vice versa. How did we get here? Kind of what prompted all of that, and how did we get here?
Yeah, so I would start just with the pace of play that here at Annexus, as far as how we think about bringing on new distribution partners. If as we start to work more together, you, the advisor on the phone, one thing you'll realize pretty quick that from product development standpoint, the agencies that we decide to do business with, we don't move too fast, Gonzalo. As you know, we want to make sure that we identify the right type of partnership, that are good teachers, that understand the importance of it's not an illustration story, within a life insurance conversation. It's really about how can we bring really good consumer value when you think about life insurance in general. And it's really hard to find those kinds of agencies throughout the country that really understand and respect a model that we have, and we'll spend more time on that today, a model about telling a story, about being good teachers. And as we started thinking about bringing on new distribution, I've always had kind of a short list of agencies that I thought would be a potential good partnership, and you've always been kind of in that top of the heap in a sense. So being very deliberate in our conversations, who we talk to, trying to find the right fit from a partnership standpoint. That's not just about the product, it's about the overall business model that we have and how that can help you provide additional value to your advisors that you serve every day. So it's amazing. It's been a year, buddy. I think I even picked up the bill there. Your cheap date.
I think it's been more than a year, James. Well, listen, thank you.
Your cheap date, $12.50.
We're thrilled to be on the phone, and as James said, we've spent months and months of back and forth in trying to bring this deal together. 30 years ago, AgencyONE wrote a ton of variable life and universal life products in the accumulation space, and this was way before IUL really became mainstream. And within the last 10 years, as IUL began to come out and some of the new products began to come out for the accumulation market, there was a little hesitancy on our part, and I think many of the advisors potentially on the phone with some of the product expenses that were built in and so on. As products got better, we started to see some new things coming along post AG 49 with some of these multipliers and leverage and some of these products in the market that, very good. I'm not saying they're bad products, but they're different for sure, and they have some element of risk to them that maybe some people on the phone or some consumers, it's just not right for them. But we've been doing this long enough to know that VUL and UL products, and over the years we've just had a lot of missed expectations relative to illustrations, and I think the industry, excuse me, has generally disappointed consumers by underperforming the illustrations that we show. And that's not to say again that the products are bad, but I think it's more about sequence of returns in illustrations not being met. I think it's just, we've got a tool that the industry gives us to show people projections, and what's not in there is consistency of returns in real life versus what we show in these illustrations. I love the managed index approach used by Annexus as a way to take volatility out of returns, because consistency of returns and low expenses is critical to the success, right? And so, James, let's get into your prepared remarks. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, what I just said, and maybe that's a good segue right into your prepared remarks.
I think the issues you have in these conversations, making sure it's sustainable. One of the things I've always respected about your organization is that you're dealing with some planning concepts that really have to have a long-term appeal to the consumer. They have to perform. So when we say sustainability, it's not just about consistency of returns. It's also about making sure that we meet the expectations of the client based upon the original conversation, and making sure the different par rates, the par rates that you have on these various IUL contracts, that they are sustainable. We started to see some great carriers, some good people that we all do business with, but they've had to make some really hard decisions. But we're seeing some companies say we don't want any more business in the S&P. We can't handle the volatility, and those are really hard conversations as you as the advisor to have with the client, to say, the plan that we put together a year ago, some of these cases were a year ago or 10 years ago, where now you're having to say to your customer things have changed, and now you have to apologize, and sustainability is crucial. We never want to have you have to apologize to a customer. Not to say that our par rates can't change. We'll spend more time on that, but sustainability is really, really important part of what we do.
Right. And that really is a kind of a sign of the times. I mean, right now it's the interest rate environment and the volatility of the markets are such that, people are having to make some pretty tough decisions around how, cap rates and other things that are structured into these IUL products are going to continue to move forward. So, and that's just a great story for Annexus. So why don't you walk us through what you got here to share with us today, and knowing that we're going to get deep into how these indexes are structured on Wednesday.
That's perfect. So let me just start with a little bit of who we are, and I'll start with just a little bit about me. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Nebraska, and most of my career came from the field. And then the last, up to the most recent 5 years, 20 years of my career in that time frame, I've spent most of my career leading sales distributions for different insurance carriers. One you probably know real well, Lincoln Benefit Life. You probably know Transamerica, and that's where Gonzalo and I have developed a relationship over time. And one of the things that I really struggle with in that particular role is how product development came into play. And one of the unique things that really pulled me to leave kind of the corporate environment and come to Annexus was this idea of around bringing new innovation to the marketplace. Not to say carriers don't, but it's a little different in terms of how we go to market at the carrier side. It's more about how does it work within the distribution versus what's really best for the customer. So one of the things you'll find with Annexus in terms of who we are, it really is about innovation and different ideas and concepts, and frankly, ideas and concepts that a lot of you have never heard before. And some of it may be a replay, but a lot of it's very new, and it's a different concept in a different way in terms of how we potentially go to market. So when you start looking at Annexus, what Annexus really means is this idea of bringing together distribution as AgencyONE, bringing together people like you, the advisor, the best in the industry, bringing together highlighted carriers. Securian is our life offering, along with Nationwide, investment banks like JP Morgan, UBS. It's about bringing together the best of the industry for one cause, and that is about the customer. Going back to have an offering that you can look the customer in the eye and deliver on the expectation and never have to put your hand on the heart and never have to apologize. So Annexus, that's who we are. It's about bringing together the best of the best. So we are a product development company. You know, a lot of people look at us, Gonzalo, as an insurance carrier or potential an agency. You know, we're not. We're all about product innovation. This all started, Gonzalo, it's crazy. I've been on board for a little over 5 years now, going on 5 years actually in August. And this all started 13, 14 years ago, about this innovation of product development on income-based products. At the time, it was fixed index annuities. In the most recent 5 years, it has all been about, in addition, life insurance, accumulation type products, index universal life. At our core, who we are is product innovation. I think it's important too, Gonzalo, and for the folks on the call, is to really understand a little bit more about when I say product development. It's really about the resources that we do have at our disposal that go to work with us on a daily basis, really on three different tracks. Number one, it's about developing product that we're going to launch today. It could be also products that we sold 10, 12 years ago to make sure they're performing as sold. And the third bucket is more about where's this innovation going the next 6, 7 years, 3 years on product innovation. And it all has to do with our mutual exclusive relationship with Genesis Financial. You know, Genesis Financial has been with us from the beginning. We have at our disposal 16, 17 actuaries that every day we're working with them in creating new product innovation when it comes to various accumulation products, as well as income-based products like annuities. This is our disposal. You can see here that the patents that we've created over the years, there's 15 that have been issued, and 17 of those are still pending. Now, when you think about carriers, insurance carriers, to try to separate ourselves from the carrier side, we look inside a carrier. You may have 3 or 4 actuaries, and typically speaking, there's not patents within a product design. So as you start to work with us, you're going to be able to have a different offering that insurance carriers in general are not able to perform. So Gonzalo, I'll just pause there, see if there's any comments or anything you want to add to that.
No, I think what's important here is that, this is a team effort between Annexus, Genesis, obviously the insurance companies that we're talking about today, which are Nationwide and Securian. There was a question to discuss living benefits on the Annexus IUL and GUL products. We're going to get to that, but I just want to be clear to Alan Kay, who asked the question, is these are only IUL products. There is no GUL offering in this. So we'll get to living benefits at a later point. So bear with us on that.
So Genesis Financial, important part of our relationship, and then it's really about, it's really focusing on, if we help your clients succeed, you're going to succeed. Going back to what I said earlier, if we can put our hand on our heart to say, this is the right innovation, this is the right index design, and by the way, that discipline to get to the place where our heart and our hand are in sync in terms of the right thing, if that takes 6 months or 6 years, we're okay with that. We want to make sure that we always put you, the advisor, in a place that you can succeed. If the client succeeds, we're going to be okay. It's about innovating that expectation. And then from there, it's about elite distribution, partners. It's about how we go to market. One of the special things about this relationship with AgencyONE is you're part of a really small group of advisors who get access to our offering. And when you start looking at the actual numbers of actual advisors like you that have access, it's less than 3,000 advisors throughout the country who have access to our proprietary products, as in Securian on the life side, as well as Nationwide on the life side. So you're part of a very, very small group of advisors throughout the country have access. Now, why is that important? Well, it goes back to the why. Why did we decide to do this? If we can control the commoditization of this space, and what I mean by that is not everyone gets access. Not every agency gets access. Not every advisor gets access. If we can bring this to just a few, 15, 16 different agencies throughout the country, like AgencyONE that we select as a good partner, that then you as the advisor have access to, we know that's going to open up new conversations with your current clients, but also it's going to open up new conversations with new clients. You know, we have not seen very many times since we launched our IUL products with Nationwide as well as Securian. You're not going to have this conversation where your client says, well, the advisor down the road has access to this. I think it's happened twice in the last 5 years since we launched. So you're going to have something very uniquely different than the advisors in your particular area. Gonzalo, I know this is a big part of our conversation with you and Kathy and Ed. You being an agency that was selected, you selected us, but then you were thinking a lot about your advisors, right? About giving them an additional layer of value.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, in the world we live in, it's all about differentiation, and certainly our relationship with Annexus has allowed us to do some of that. So, you know, what I think is important, James, is that we begin to get a little bit more detail around this. So, I mean, I think everybody kind of gets the relationship stuff. We're there. We've been privileged to be selected as one of the few agencies in the country to do this. Now, there is a question on the board, and I want to throw this out to you, James. The question is, there's been a lot of profitability of the marketing groups with this product. I don't know if it's this product in particular. With limited liquidity for 7 to 10 years, expenses and profitability can be covered and earned over that time, not all up front. I would like full transparency on loads and costs for the benefit of my clients. So before you answer that, I think it's important to say AgencyONE was selected only to distribute the IUL products with Securian and with Nationwide. You can see the up on the board all the different strategic partnerships that Annexus and James have. I'm going to let him get to that in a minute. But I think it's important that we all understand that there's a difference between IUL and the equity index offering that Annexus does. I don't know anything about the annuity, so I don't know if that relates to the annuity side or if it's something completely different.
Yeah, I would say so. So you're right. The offering obviously is the Securian IUL, the Nationwide IUL. The discipline, though, as far as how we go to market on product development, whether it be annuities or life insurance, exactly the same. And that is, don't try to win the illustration game, specifically in IUL. Keep our costs extremely low, and we'll spend some more time on this on future training. In fact, my partner, Alan Sukerman, is on the line. He's our national life specialist. He was our first life edition that we brought on, a little over going on 5 years ago. He's going to teach you, the really intricate parts of this story that is uniquely different. And one of the things you will find is the costs are industry leading, lowest in the industry, whether it be Securian and or the Nationwide offering. Okay. This slide here does a really nice job of just giving you a kind of a stamp about who we're doing business with, whether it be the various insurance carriers. You can see Securian, you can see Nationwide, the various investment banks that we work with. You know, Gonzalo, one of the things that people don't realize, and your advisors will start to know more as we move on, it's not about just the actual widget that we're building, the IUL. It really is about the various investment banks that we do business with. And Tom Haynes on Wednesday, and I know you'll touch on this in a moment, head of our index solutions, is going to touch on some of the due diligence we go through. But for your advisors today, I think this is important just to see who we're doing business with.
Yeah, and James, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up. If you can go back to the previous slide for just a second. Again, just to put a little bit of meat around this, and by the way, the person who asked the question earlier, they were referring to the equity index product, so I think we're clear on the differentiation between the IUL products and the index products. I think it's important to note here that the Nationwide product has some unique indexes, and I know you've got a relationship with Roger Ibbotson at Zebra. Can you just touch upon that, and also about the Prism index at Securian, because that kind of brings all these partners at some level back together again.
Yeah, so I'll start with just on the Annexus side. It really was around making sure the product offerings that we have stable, strong companies. And what I'm excited about sharing more with your advisors is Securian Mutual Company, Nationwide, a mutual company, obviously brand names that we all recognize. it was beyond that. It was important to make sure that the IUL accumulation that we created that has a very strong success on a going forward basis succeed to meet the expectations that you're having with the client. And we just knew, gosh, going back 4 quarters ago, that S&P designs in general, that's what we saw in the marketplace in IUL chassis. The majority of the time, they're always on an S&P all the time. And when we started having conversations with various investment banks on Wall Street, it was validated that there's not enough horsepower in the S&P going forward. We want to make sure that we created a different type of index that provided what I would say good singles and doubles, get consistent on base percentage.
Right.
The movie I always loved, Gonzalo, is the Moneyball analogy, right? The movie, it's not about the home run hitters. It's about how do we get on base and find those kind of plays. And whether it's nationwide with Roger Ibbotson, who's our partner, who we created the Zebra Edge with, it's all about on-base percentages. Give me a single and a double, and give you the S&P that you love, but do it in a dynamic way where every quarter we're going to rebalance and get rid of anything that's over volatile. Just get rid of it. That's on the nationwide product. We're going to talk more about that in future trainings. In addition to that, you have Securian, the S&P Prism, tracked and validated by the S&P. Same methodology, smooth out the actual volatility and work on more steady, consistent returns. And that particular index has done phenomenally well. So if we can remove the volatility, smooth things out, singles and doubles, and then going back to that sustainability conversation earlier, Gonzalo, keeping our par rates extremely high. Your advisors are going to have the ability to have par rates uncapped. They're somewhere in that 115 as high as 180% uncapped on our IUL designs when you look at Securian and you look at nationwide. So singles and doubles, folks, and then maintain your pars. And obviously because of that, you're able to give your clients a very consistent, stable return in an IUL design, where on the other designs, they're obviously very, very volatile right now.
And James, I want to put in a little plug for Wednesday's call. I mean, Tom Haynes, I've had a number of calls with him, and he's just a brilliant individual. Tell us a little bit about his background, because I think it's just as an intro and as a teaser, he was part of the development of the S&P Prism Index, right? I mean, he's the guy that put it together. Is that a fair statement?
He is the guy. I mean, he's the one that, so real quick, we feel we've got the smartest man from Wall Street, smartest person from Wall Street from that perspective when it comes to index design. He came from UBS. He was an instrument part of putting together the Roger Ibbotson relationship, the Zebra Edge, which is on the Nationwide product. By the way, that particular index with Nationwide has sold since we launched in excess of over $20 billion in sales. Now, most importantly, it's about the returns. The returns have been very consistent. Consumers have been very happy. That relationship with Roger, we've now brought that to the IUL side, but Tom is on the Annexus team. So he's a friend of Roger. He helped create the actual Zebra Edge. In addition to that, he's the one that started or created the S&P Prism on the Securian product. He created that. He's the one that created the relationship with the S&P in terms of validate and track it. So we'll have more conversation on Tom on Wednesday. He does a beautiful job of taking something that can be somewhat in many minds complicated, really dumbing it down to say it's pretty intuitive and straightforward. You're going to enjoy that conversation on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a brilliant guy, and again, as a teaser for Wednesday's call, if you want to really see kind of the magic behind the curtain, so to speak, Tom Haynes is the guy, and we'll get deep into the weeds on the construction of these index products and on the structuring. James, let's talk for a second. I know that this was not in our prepared portion of this, but I think it's important. Spend a few minutes on why are Annexus products different than your typical retail product? Because, I mean, we're sitting here and talk about Ibbotson and about Tom Haynes and S&P Prism and all those kinds of stuff. There's some products out there that have the JP Morgan index or this or that. I mean, where is the differentiation relative to product at Annexus? Because at the end of the day, it's still Nationwide, it's still Securian, two companies that we do a lot of business with and are very familiar with. But where is the differentiation with Annexus in these two products?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would start with the importance of the due diligence process that we go through before we green light a product. I would start there, and that's going to have that's going to have, you'll hear that message from Tom on Wednesday about making sure that on a going forward basis that the product that you've recommended to your client, that you've got a very, very strong success rate in meeting the expectations of the conversation with the client. And where I'm going with this is a lot of times distribution will provide, as in carriers will provide a product that looks really good on backcasting the last 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean it's a better product. So it's important that we do the due diligence that on a going forward basis, it's going to return. So here's an example. Here's a practical example. It's really important. Is you take a look at the S&P. The S&P year over year, we all know about the volatility. We heard feedback from advisors where the clients were in the last month of their IUL on S&P design, and they were clipping around 22% return in a matter, and they only had 1 month to go before they banked up the rate of return. In a matter of a month, the S&P gave back 25%. So they went from somewhat of a certainty they felt they were going to score to where they got a 0. That's okay. That's okay. But also on top of that, the par rates have been affected on renewals. So when we think about due diligence, we want to make sure whether the markets are doing very, very well, the equities, or if things start to contract, we want to make sure that we can eliminate those sequence of returns of zeros. So in my situation, our situation with Zebra Edge, as well as S&P Prism, both those contracts credited over 7% on S&P Prism, Securian, Zebra Edge Nationwide. They both credit over 7% compared to an S&P being 0, and our par rates have not changed. So I would say due diligence and making sure that we really pay attention, not so much what the last 10 years look like, but on a going forward basis, can these indexes, can this IUL design, can it sustain, can it provide value and eliminate some of these odd sequence of returns that we see that really can affect the contract and keep it more stable. So I would say that's really, really important.
Yeah, and you know, you and I have had this conversation. I mean, when you look at an IUL illustration, you're illustrating, I'm just going to make a number, 6% year over year over year over year, right? You're in 40 years, it's 6% every year. When we know that in reality, for the most part, about 75, 80% of the time, it's either a cap or a floor, right?
Yes.
It's either 0 or 10 or 0 or 9.5 or whatever the cap rates are. This is a very different animal. And I think that's kind of where this gets very interesting, because you guys are looking at very consistent, you know, you're trying to stay within that band on a going forward basis. So the closer you stay to 6 every year, and you certainly have upsides and below that as well, but the closer you stay to that 6 on a consistent basis, the more likely that illustration is going to be real.
Yeah, and we're coming down to a half hour here. Just two comments to that. I'll throw it back to you. I mean, if you do a 5.5 to 6% return on an index, you're giving your client over 8. I mean, that's the kind of conversation that's fun. In addition to what makes us different, it really is about beyond the actual indexes. It is the Annexus design on the products, low cost, high guarantees. That's really important. In addition to that, going back to distribution, it really is different in that we only give this to a few, as in the agency, as an AgencyONE, but then the advisors as well. That's a big part of our story.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, James. Hey, listen, I know you've got one more slide at the end, or maybe one or two. I don't have any other questions. Mr. Larkins, I do have a question from you. I'll call you after this call. Go ahead, James.
You know, I just want to just
wrap it up.
Annexus and on behalf of Alan Zuckerman, who's on the line with me, you'll hear more from Alan when we start doing more deep down training. We're just excited about this partnership, and for many of you, this is new. You may not have heard of Annexus. We'll spend more time in that conversation, but more importantly, how can this offering with AgencyONE open up some new conversations? Now, we're not going to win every case, we won't, but I really do believe that we're going to open up new conversations with your clients as well as prospects that will lead you to new organic sales. And when it works on the Annexus offering, you know, we'll obviously earn your business. So back to you, Gonzalo.
Thank you, James. Listen, I want to wrap this up because we're right at the hour if there are no more questions. You know, we talked a little bit about the indexes and why they're different. The deep dive on that is going to be on Wednesday with Tom Haynes. So he's really going to get into how the Annexus indexes are structured and constructed to do all the things that James just talked about. If you're interested in selling IUL in the accumulation retirement supplement space, you need to be on that call on Wednesday. So with that, if we don't have any more questions, yes, sir.
Gonzalo, it's Barry. Jamie, if I'm licensed with, good to see you. If I'm licensed with good. If I'm licensed with Annexus with some Arizona firm, is it going to be hard for me to switch my license to AgencyONE, my contract with Annexus?
Yeah, it is. You know, the answer is as long as we follow the normal transfer rules. It's an easy process, buddy. No problem.
Okay, cool. I just couldn't type a question, so I barged in. Sorry.
Good to hear your voice.
Okay.
Good to hear your voice and see you. Good to see you.
Well, listen, with that said, Kathy, I'll turn it back to you. We are done with this call, and I appreciate everybody being on the phone, and I look forward to speaking to you again on Wednesday noon. Kathy?
Yep. Thank you, everybody. As Gonzalo said, the next call is 12 o'clock noon on Wednesday for a deep dive into how Annexus builds the products and index strategies. If you have any questions about working with AgencyONE, how you can gain access to these products, how we can help you introduce these products to your clients, and if there's anything that we can do for you during this time, while everyone's working from home and trying to figure out how to remain productive and active, please call us. We've got a lot of ideas and we're very excited to talk with you. The entire team is here to serve you. So please be well, be safe. James, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And we look forward to welcoming you and your colleagues again on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Be safe, everybody, and we'll talk. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.